Welcome to the Called to Create podcast. I am the president of LDS PMA, Mike House, guest hosting today, and I'm very pleased that Greg Matsen of the Cwic Show was gracious enough to join us today, and I look forward to this conversation. Thank you, Greg, for being here.
Mike, thanks for the invite. I'm excited about this.
Yeah, we didn't meet too long ago. This was back in November at the Organized Intelligence Conference at the church office building.
Yes.
Where Elder Gong was our headliner. Fascinating conference. Lots of really interesting things. AI is a massive wave rolling toward us, already burying us, it seems, sometimes. But really interesting. And the church is very much trying to stay on top of all of those issues. So it was good to meet you there, good to meet a lot of other people there and learn a lot from Elder Gong and several others.
I enjoyed it. It was a great conference.
Yeah. So for the members of Latter-day Saints in publishing, media, and the arts, some of whom may not know who you are, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and your background, how you got started in this? I know there's some good history there.
Yeah, I've been an entrepreneur my whole life and built up a couple companies and sold them off, some well, some not so well. I had a wealth management firm up until 2020, sold that off in 2020, and I had this little podcast going for Come Follow Me at the time. I did all first 4 years of Come Follow Me, and then also covered some cultural issues on the podcast. And as I was deciding what I was going to do next, I just kept putting a little bit more time into the podcast, and eventually I ended up doing that. That's what I do now. That's what I do full time. But I'm able to do that because of my wife, who is the one who got me started with this and was the one who initiated, kind of gave me the push to get involved with the podcast and the YouTube channel. And then also starting off kind of helped support us in doing this as she worked with our kids out of the home now, and she went to work and is very much behind what we do with Cwic Media and the Cwic Show.
Now, I know when you were talking to Kurt Frankum back in 2022, you called yourself a podcaster. You're a little more than that, though. You're doing cruises and other sorts of appearances. What are you now?
That's a good question. I don't know. I don't know how to describe it exactly, but yeah, it's blossomed out from there. And I look for different opportunities and things that, I'm late enough in my life now where I guess I know what I want. And so I try to do what I want to do, and most of that is associated with the gospel and the church, but now I lead several tours each year. I travel about 4 months of the year and do trips to Egypt, where we go over things like the temple and the Book of Abraham, and we also go to Turkey and cover the New Testament, and Greece and Israel and a few other places here and there also. So I'm doing quite a bit of that and really enjoy that. And one of the things I really enjoy about it is that a lot of the people that end up going on these tours are listeners to the podcast. And so as I have, it's a lot different to actually talk to people that instead of talking to a camera. And so to be able to meet them firsthand is what I really enjoy about that. I love teaching.
Oh, sure.
So I teach on those tours. I'm the educator, but I also, the best part of it is just meeting people and having the chance to actually interact face to face with them.
And you get to work with a lot of other, we'll call them LDS influencers on those trips, right?
Yes.
And I saw that you even got to do a little dance montage with some of them.
Saw that, okay.
How did that come about?
Yeah, that was Jasmine Rappley, who is an influencer.
That was Jasmine, okay.
That was Jasmine's idea. She's kind of plugged into the LDS culture and what's going on online. So it's kind of a mock dance to a dance that was done on the popular TV series Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. And so we were dancing kind of like they had danced in a certain clip. And so that was kind of fun.
Did that take you out of your comfort zone?
I love dancing. I don't know if it took me out of my comfort zone. I think for some of the guys it did. I don't know. I might have been in my element there.
It would take me out of mine.
Would it?
I will tell you that. Yes. Yeah. Yes. I mean, I could do it, I suppose.
Sure.
And Jasmine, she was one of our presenters at our last conference, our last LDS PMA conference.
Oh, okay.
And I didn't get to attend her session, but then I watched it later, and it was excellent.
Yeah, she's very good. The thing about Jasmine, she's got a great grasp of the gospel.
Yeah.
First of all, she's got a background where she studied ancient Near East things, and and the gospel. And then
Yeah.
she's also a very talented editor and
Okay.
understands social media very well. So you bring those two worlds together, and she's right in the right place.
She talked about how many thumbnails she went through to figure out the right thumbnail to use for each podcast. She's serious about, putting out a really polished product.
Yeah, I got invited to go to a presentation for women influencers just about a month ago, maybe a little longer, and she was one of the presenters there.
Okay.
She was going through everything that she does. She's got a whole checklist of what she does for every video
Yeah.
that she puts up, from the title, the thumbnail, the very first words she says. So she really knows what she's doing, and it shows, right? She gets a lot of views and does a
Yeah.
great job, and she's a great voice. So
Yeah. Now, you talked about culture and how you had started a podcast focused on Come Follow Me,
mhm.
but you really can't separate gospel living from the culture around us, right? It's part of the same whole. And so you
Yeah,
started talking about more cultural issues, which obviously bleeds into political issues and economic issues. You just can't separate them.
yes, I think so.
What's been the biggest challenge in doing that? I remember I first saw you speak in person at a Book of Mormon evidence conference
Hmm.
down in Sandy, Utah, and you were speaking about some of these cultural issues. What have been some of the challenges about doing that with your audience, I suppose I should ask?
So when I had first started this, actually right before I did Come Follow Me, I had started with more on the cultural, but still scriptural and gospel topics. But what I did is, when we had, I've got 4 kids,
Okay.
and so we would have these dinner discussions, and we would go into, philosophy, history,
Okay.
books that we've read, current events, and really have some really good discussions. Dinner time was a great time for our
Oh,
family.
yeah.
And so what I decided to do, I think the first things, or one of the first things that I did on the podcast, is I just stuck a microphone down on the middle of the dinner table.
Oh,
And then
really?
I would start off a discussion with our family, and we would just all
Okay.
talk and go in on it. And it was everything from, the church to political issues, cultural trends, and really good discussions that you would get with people from different generations. I called it, the series I called Dinner with Millennials, because my kids were mostly millennials
Okay.
and of that generation. And so that's what we started with. And as my wife wanted me to do the Come Follow Me, when that came around, I started going to that. It was interesting because I'd been doing it for about a year.
Okay.
And then I decided I can't hold back anymore. I want to go back and start doing some of the cultural things that I really want to discuss.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of interesting because I had, maybe 5,000, not a lot, but maybe 5,000 subscribers at the time. And all of
Okay.
a sudden there was this shift that went from not only doing the Come Follow Me every week, but I was now covering these other issues. And a lot of those do become, they're controversial issues. And I like to tackle those things. And so the challenges there are that you get a lot of opinions
Yeah.
from a lot of different angles. And so
Yeah.
I will have challenges would be, and I've got some pretty thick skin, so it's okay, but I get a lot of pushback from everything from very orthodox believing Latter-day Saints
Uh-huh.
to those who have left the church to those that are outside of our faith that don't like our faith, just from all sides based on whatever topic it is that I might be covering at the time. And so that's challenging. And I think that for a lot of people that might be looking at, we're getting this real explosion right now in voices
Mhm.
online for faithful
Yeah.
Latter-day Saints, which is fantastic.
Oh,
A
yeah.
lot of young voices that are really starting to come out. And I think one of the things that might hold people back or had held people back in the past is they were, you become vulnerable. You're putting yourself out there. Everything from
Sure.
what do you look like? What are you wearing? How do you
Mhm.
speak? What are you talking about? You put yourself out there and people are a little concerned about, being that vulnerable and uncomfortable even speaking into a camera,
Yeah. Yeah.
instead of a real person. So I think once you can get over that a little bit, then you can really thrive online. You can really do well. But those are
Sure.
I think the challenges that everybody faces to some degree. Maybe me
Yeah.
more than most on the topics that I cover. But I had to get used to talking to a camera. That's for sure.
Yeah.
That was an odd thing.
Well, that segues me into another question I wanted to ask you. You interviewed a pair of guys called Holy Rebellion. They have a new
Yeah.
podcast called Holy Rebellion.
Yes.
And they talked about how they had an internal goal, and not just for them, but for all LDS influencers to achieve 1 billion, I think it was 1 billion monthly
Hmm.
views
Yeah.
across this LDS influence sphere.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on that? And how do we go about spreading the light of Christ so broadly to reach 1 billion views a month?
Uh, it's a very aggressive goal, but I think it is attainable. I really think that,
Yeah.
a lot of the larger, when you add in, you've got YouTube, but when you add in all of the social media platforms, there are
Yeah.
already millions and millions of monthly views,
Right.
millions and millions of monthly views that we have. I don't know what the total is. It'd be interesting for somebody to do an analysis on that to try and
Yeah.
gather, what that might be. And I'm just talking about English, even English speaking, and which would
Oh,
be
yeah.
obviously the bulk. But I think that a billion is very attainable. And I think that right now, even in the last 6 months, there's been so many new voices that are coming out there on Facebook and especially
For sure.
Instagram, for example, on the social media platforms and TikTok, that I think we're just at the very tip of the iceberg on
Mhm.
where this is going to go. I think that Latter-day Saints have not been able in other ways to really express themselves in a way that is, I can be confident sitting in my own room or car
Yeah.
or studio, say what I need to say and still be able to reach so many different people. And you're starting to see that confidence
Oh, yeah.
that's coming out. And so with especially the younger generation,
Mhm.
they are very confident in their convictions and they're
Yeah.
well educated, they're doctrinal, they're authentic,
Yeah.
and it's very refreshing. And it's all of a sudden there's this piercing of the mists of darkness that surround the perception of who the Latter-day Saints are, to the point that you have prominent Latter-day Saint influencers being invited to the table at Christian conventions
Oh, yeah.
and interfaith dialogues and atheist channels and you know just some very interesting places where we now are able to tell people what we really believe instead of what they think we
Oh,
believe.
sure. No, I'm seeing that myself. And I'll tell you a quick story. I started watching the Outdoor Boys channel,
Mm-hmm.
having no idea who Luke Nichols was. I didn't even
Yeah.
know that was the name of the guy doing it. And I really enjoyed it. And about 2 weeks later, I found out that his name was Luke Nichols and that he was LDS.
Yes.
And then, boom, he gets called to the Young Men General Advisory Council of the
Mm-hmm.
church. Literally about 2 to 3 weeks after I'd started watching those videos.
Yeah.
And I had no idea who he was, how big he was, has 17 million subscribers.
Mm-hmm.
The Lord has to be orchestrating a lot of this. And then Nick Shirley pops up and Kai Schwemmer pops up
Mm-hmm.
and like I said, I've gotten to know you over probably the last 3 years or so a little bit, what you're doing,
Mm-hmm.
which is really good. So you're right, lots of good stuff, lots of young people. I'd love to see it.
On that, I was going to say, Mike, on
Yeah,
that
go ahead.
advisory board, what I think is fantastic is that I'm trying to think of everybody that was on that, but you did have Luke, but you also had
Believes.
Daryl Eves, who is a YouTube guru.
Yeah.
You have Anthony Sweat, who's kind of an
Anthony Sweat.
influencer. The
John
I
Hilton
forget his
III.
name from True Millennial.
I forget his name. Yes,
The younger
yes.
guy, yeah. There were 4 or 5 of those members of that advisory board were influencers, and I think the church is seeing, oh, okay, this is very important for us to have these types of individuals that have strong
Yes.
testimonies. They're going to be supportive, obviously, of the church and the doctrine, but they are able to get out to people. They know where things are going, and they've got a foot in the door on it.
They're reaching people in effective ways.
Hmm.
And you're right. They're faithful in the gospel and they can reach people in different ways and reach more people that maybe we aren't reaching.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
So that's good. So, what excites you most about what's coming? What drives you every day? I know you're very busy. You're doing lots of things. You came to the AI conference I was at, so I mean, you're all over the place. I know you live in Arizona. That conference was in at the church office building in Salt Lake City. You traveled to Egypt. You're just all over the place. What's really driving you now in terms of what's coming next?
I think that there's two things. Number one, it is what I want to do. It's just, I love doing what I do. So I'm able to do what I want to do. And that's pretty amazing. I do think that a lot of those that have been in this space for at least a while, and maybe those that are just starting even, that there is a sense of a calling, that you're able to create something positive and make a change in people's lives.
Yeah.
And so that I think is the biggest issue and I know a lot of these individuals, especially the ones that have been around for a few years, and I think all of them are, one of the trips that we did recently was a cruise we called Wave Makers, and it was about influencers. It's one where we did the dance,
Okay.
and one of the things that was so neat to see is each of these influencers were able to go up and give a couple of presentations during the week in
Okay.
front of everybody, hundreds of people. And what I enjoy the most is for people to see the testimony and the conviction that these individuals have and the sacrifice that they're making, that most of them are making this. It's a sacrifice, right? I mean, so there is a sense of a calling to go and do all of these things, and a sense that I am willing to consecrate my time to
Yeah.
go and make these things happen. I mean, these people aren't making a bunch of money. They're for the most part, most of these individuals are doing this on the side, and
Okay.
and I love hearing those stories. We had every one of these influencers give their story
Hmm.
as one of their presentations. And you can just see the sacrifice that's being made with this. And these are the type of people that mostly I think, are out there and that are being successful, because I think people sense that.
Well, they're heeding the call that President Nelson gave to all of us, right? To
Mm-hmm.
gather Israel. We are all being called to gather Israel. So you're doing it in your way, and I'm doing it in my way. And everybody needs to find ways that they can do that and do that better, because we really are in the last of the last of the last days.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think people feel that, and it's exciting. I mean, honestly, it's exciting to be a part of that.
Yeah. Who's your favorite political science professor at BYU?
That would be Ralph Hancock, definitely at BYU. He's a good friend of mine. He's a business partner. I really enjoy what his message is,
Yeah.
and it is one of what he calls the good. It is the
Yes.
question of the good,
Hmm.
and it has to do with love. What is love really? He gets into very deep levels of philosophy,
Yeah.
and how the founding of America is built on these philosophies of good, and so that would definitely be my guy. And I was just with him I had breakfast with him on Friday.
Oh, did you? Oh,
Yeah.
very good. I don't know Ralph that well. He was one of my political science professors way back when.
Okay.
I was an economics major and a poli sci minor,
Okay.
but I took classes from him and Noel Reynolds and others.
Okay.
And I still
I
have
was
an
with Noel last
article.
week too.
Did you?
Yeah.
Okay. I still have an article saved that I will reread once in a while that Ralph wrote a long time ago called Robespierre and the Rights of Man.
Mm,
And
okay.
it's published in some magazine or some academic journal that you can't find online. I can't find it in the library either, but I've got a copy because he
Okay.
had handed it out as part of the materials for one of his classes. So
Interesting.
from a long
Yeah.
time ago.
No, he's
Good
great.
man.
He's fantastic.
And he started something, it's like an online curriculum, teaching
Hmm.
curriculum for students with Elizabeth, what's her last name? Darn it.
Sexton.
Yes, called Fathom the Good,
Hmm.
right? So people can
Yeah.
find that. And I'll share that with people. I've shared that with people in presentations. Hey, go
Yeah.
check this out.
It's
They've got this
fantastic. I mean,
curriculum.
and there's sample courses in there. You can go through a whole sample course to see kind of what message he's trying to give. But I mean, there are thousands of hours that have been put into that curriculum, and there's an adult course in there. It's also high school courses, and
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
fantastic stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, good. So one question I wanted to ask about truth and peacemaking.
Mm.
And I know that you are a student of truth. I hear that come across in everything you're doing. You're really honestly seeking truth. And of course, that seeking of truth often comes with tension and conflict,
Hmm.
right? With others who are either also seeking truth or they're seeking something else,
Yes.
right? And we're also called to be peacemakers. And I like your approach. Tell us a little bit about your approach to truth seeking and peacemaking.
Sure. I mean, blessed are the peacemakers. What is peace? I think that's the first thing we need to look at
Mhm.
with this is what really is peace. And I think about, for example, I go back to the Old Testament on this and look at Melchizedek, the figure of
Okay.
Melchizedek, which means the king of righteousness.
Yeah.
And what city was he the king of? He was the king of Salem, which
Mhm.
means shalom. It's peace. He's the king of peace, the place called peace. And that city becomes lifted up and it becomes a Zion civilization, right? And so you think, well, how did that happen? Because he starts off with it where it's very iniquitous, a
Mhm.
very iniquitous place. So how does that change? I don't think that everyone just all of a sudden is in an instant their hearts are changed. My guess is that the gospel is preached. I think Jesus Christ is preached. And then there's an invitation to all to join. And I think that you do that in a couple of ways. But first of all, you do that by invitation, and that invitation goes to all, and some are not going to choose it. We have agency.
Yeah.
And secondly, you do it understanding that there may be conflict, but you're not seeking contention. And those are
Mhm.
different. Conflict and
Right.
contention are very different things. Conflict, if you look at, well, if we stick to our values in the gospel, the restored gospel, and Babylon continues to move further and further away from those values, which is what we see,
Mhm.
then inevitably there's going to be conflict between those two worldviews and those two
Right.
agendas. And so if I stick to my guns, I'm going to have conflict sometimes, not always, but there's sometimes there's going to be conflict
Mhm.
in trying to seek the truth. And I think people need to understand that. And I think one of the problems we have as Latter-day Saints is that we hold up a value of niceness and politeness
Yeah.
above all things, including truth. And
Yep. Yep.
and I think that is I don't think well I know that's not right, and I don't think that's being Christ-like. And
Mhm.
I think that Christ would say, Christ always taught the truth.
Mhm.
He tried to do that with love, but he stuck to his guns. And yet he was still willing to sit down with the sinners, right? And so there's
Absolutely.
a difference between contention and conflict. Obviously, conflict surrounded him wherever he went.
Mhm.
And I think we need to understand that that's possible for us. If we stick up for what we believe in, there's going to be some conflict that's built there. But if
Yeah.
we leave contention out of it, at least on our end, as President Nelson
Mhm.
advises us to do, I think that we're not looking to dunk on someone. I don't think that we're trying to judge someone. I think we're
Right.
just trying to preach the truth and invite. And so if we see peace then as what Melchizedek built and the process that might have taken, I think we need to go through that, right? We need to say we
Mhm.
invite all to come to the gospel, but some will have their agency and choose not to go with it. And that hearts need to change. If we end up with one heart and one mind for peace, for Zion,
Mhm.
then we are all going to be of one heart and one mind. And some will not choose that one heart and that one mind. And we need to understand that. And then lastly, I would just say, Mike, on that is that sometimes that niceness and politeness, I think, is a mask for avoiding conflict.
Sure. Sure.
And that is something we probably need to try and move our values hierarchy a little bit, right? And change that a little bit. And that I'm not saying to be mean at all, of course. I'm saying that we need to be kind, It's
Yeah.
interesting. I've run through the general conference talks over, I don't know, the last 10, 20 years, and you will not see the brethren use the word nice as a virtue. They might say something about a nice old man or something like that, but as far as if they're talking about a characteristic, a
Okay.
virtue, they don't use the term nice. They will say kind
Hmm.
as they hold that up. They'll talk about kindness, which is a more of an act of commission, right? Whereas niceness might be passivity and
Oh,
omission, so to speak.
okay.
So I think that that's something that we need to learn as Latter-day Saints in our culture is conflict may exist sometimes,
Mhm.
but if we want to seek for truth and be real peacemakers, which I think is Zion builders, it's the same thing to me,
Yeah.
then we want to stick to that truth and invite others to join us.
Very well said. Thank you. I have a book you might like if you haven't heard of it already.
Mm.
This guy's not LDS. He's a U.S. Army Ranger chaplain. John McDougall wrote a book called Jesus Was an Airborne Ranger.
Interesting.
You would love it.
Ah, I'll check it
Right,
out.
right up that alley. It's not a very long book. It's an easy read. What would you tell LDS or faith-driven creators
Hmm.
who are trying to fulfill their calling to gather Israel? What would you
Don't
say
be
to us
bashful.
to help us?
Don't be bashful. I'll say specifically with Latter-day Saints, there is a sense sometimes, and it's natural for us to try and fit in.
Okay.
But we're a peculiar people, so we may not fit in. I would say if you're an influencer, what I would suggest, the two things I would suggest is number one, be authentic. Just be
Okay.
yourself. You don't need to put a persona up. You don't need to worry about, well, what are people going to think of me? Just be authentic, as authentic as you can. Just be yourself. That is what is going to attract more eyeballs and clicks and views and everything else and get your message across. I think you don't need, again, a mask. You don't need to put something up as a mask, some persona out there. Just be yourself. And then number two, I think is lean into your beliefs. Lean into it. Don't want to avoid them.
Yeah.
Lean into the plan of salvation. Lean into what is peculiar and plain and
Yeah.
precious about the restored gospel. And that is the momentum that is happening right now. Is that distinction that we hold, that pearl that we have, is
Yeah.
becoming more and more evident online because people are leaning into those plain and precious
Yeah.
things.
I love that. And that's what we've been trying to do at LDS PMA is lean into the restored gospel of Jesus Christ. That's what we're about. We're not officially associated with the church, but we firmly stand on that foundation.
Hmm.
And we're not
Absolutely.
going to shy away from that. There are people who would like us to because we might be able to, quote unquote, expand our reach.
Mm.
But the Lord will help us expand our reach even farther if we do stand on those values. I'm a firm believer in that. And I think that's
I
why we're
believe that's
seeing so
true.
many people rise up, that the Lord is guiding and influencing so many across the world, like you said.
That separation between the restored gospel and the rest of the world,
Yeah.
you got to just think about the iconography, the metaphor of the bright city on the hill. If that bright city on the hill is dimmed and it's down in the valley with everything else, there's
Yeah.
no real distinction for it, right? And so be distinct, be different,
Yeah.
and don't. You're going to get some pushback. You'll get pushback on people that don't like what you're saying, but
Yeah.
you have a lot of support and a lot of people that desperately need
Yeah.
to see the contrast between what is worldly and what is not.
Yeah. Excellent. I wholeheartedly agree. And it's not just that we're trying to be distinct, we're just trying to share the light of Christ,
Mhm.
which is distinct
Yes,
in this
absolutely.
fallen world.
Yeah.
So I love it. Thank you very much. Any final words? I've so appreciated this conversation. I'm going to continue to learn from the work that you're doing and the work that others are doing in your space. Any final words for us?
There's a social theory out there called the spiral of silence that I've talked about
Okay.
before.
Yep.
And that is just basically when you don't speak up about something, then the voices of opposition grow and are more
Yeah.
encouraged. And so then it becomes an even stronger narrative. And then it becomes even harder for you to speak. So you don't speak still. And it just starts to spiral in that way. And I'd say go against the spiral of silence. Go ahead, speak up, speak out. And whether that's on a podcast or through any form of media, great. If you've got that talent and you're willing to do that, then that's a fabulous way. But even in personal situations, you know, be the light on the hill and speak up and do it understanding that there might be conflict, and don't do it with contention, but do it because you're a truth seeker and you want others to be able to enjoy the same truths and peace that you have.
All right. And tell us a little bit about Cwic and what and the word Cwic and where it came from so people know where to go find you.
Yeah, so quick, it doesn't mean something. It's not four different letters. It's actually a word.
Hmm.
And it's an Old English word. When you hear about like being quickened, your spirit was quickened in the King James Version of the Bible, Jacobean English.
Yeah.
If you go back another 500, 600 years into Old English, it's CWIC. And the emphasis on that word then was on alive and intelligent. Is what it meant. And so
Alive
that's what the
and
word means. It's
intelligent.
an Old English word that means alive and intelligent. And the host might not be so alive and intelligent, but at least hopefully some of the content and the guests are. But
Yeah.
it's you can find it at Cwic Show on YouTube. I've got a website that has all of the media on it and a blog, and that is found at Cwic Media, CWICmedia.com. And then we've got a newsletter that goes out called Alive and Intelligent, which is the meaning of quick, and that's at Substack.com.
Yep. And I'm on that. Thank you again. This has been fabulous. And we look forward to seeing what else you have in store for us.
Appreciate that, Mike, and good luck
Thank
to
you,
you
Greg.
guys and all you're trying to accomplish.